This is Adomako Man, and you are tuning in to the Producing Peace podcast, a podcast that celebrates the vibrant tastemakers shaping NYC's cultural landscape. From artists to activists, we spotlight individuals driving positive change and shaping the future of our city. I'm sitting with an associate producer with Very Rare Productions, a woman-led company known for its innovative and inclusive approach to media. My guest is not only a talented producer, but also a passionate gardener, photographer, model, and actress. Her multifaceted career has made her a notable figure in New York City, where she continues to inspire and influence many. She has also made significant contributions as one of the authors of From Kingsbridge to Canarsie, Reflections of 8 NYC Girls, and is the creative force behind the documentary Shifted Energy. Please welcome one of my closest friends, my sister, my cousin, my girlfriend, Sofija Maria Kulikauskas. Hi.
Hey, what an introduction.
Yeah, I mean, I like to keep good company. How does this feel?
Feels nostalgic.
Yeah?
It feels very like we've done this so many times,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels very organic. I feel like I'm in my element and I feel safe with you. So I could be nervous, but I'm just excited to support you in this and like share our stories.
Thank
we
you.
love sharing our stories.
Yeah, we have so many stories that we're going to be sharing. I am a little nervous.
Yeah.
Only just because like I feel you know me so well and we've been through so much and I know you and I know you so well. So it's just different. I don't know. I guess the reason why I feel nervous is because I'm very protective of my private life and I am very I don't give the illusion that I'm private. I'm just very much like you see me and then you don't, but I am, you know. But we'll get into all of that. But I first wanted to go into a little back to our history and how do you remember us meeting? Because we both sit at different, I think, perspectives, of course, of our meeting.
Yeah, I think we both agree that we met at WKCR.
You made it sound like it was a delusion.
No, I mean, it's been so long, and I feel like memories always get skewed over time. And they have so many studies about memories that someone will really be convinced that something happened and it actually didn't. So it's funny how our minds play tricks on us.
Okay.
But for sure, we've definitely met at WKCR, which is a college radio station at Columbia University, where I was brought in through a classmate of mine, our friend Evan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very excited because I love going to new spaces with new people who allow me to express myself and be creative. And I'm just a curious person and I'll do something always once. So I just remember just kind of Evan told me about it and I was like, oh, can you take me? Can you bring me? And he was like, sure. And we went and it was like this, I hate to put WKCR on the spot, but it was kind of like this janky studio that was like, I mean, it's journalism. So things are like piling to the top. And then there's this kid on the floor who's sitting on the lockers with his red and black checkered pants.
No, I don't think I was wearing. Was I wearing? You was wearing checkered pants.
You were wearing checkered. No, you were wearing these red, black plaid pants.
I remember those pants, but I don't think
you were wearing those pants.
We were not wearing the same thing at the same time.
No, but
you was wearing checkered pants.
I had a black gray checkered pants. You had red black checkered pants, and you had and you had a bucket hat on, and you had your braids, and you were sitting on the ground, and you were just like against the lockers.
Okay.
And you were just like talking, and I was just like, who is this boy talking? You were just talking, and like there was a presence about you with all of these other young people. And I was just like, oh, he's just like that social person. Cool. I'm excited because I'm also social. And it's funny because we have similar zodiac placements.
Yeah.
And it's almost the same except our rising and our moon and our sun. But it just like made me feel like, oh, okay, this is real, recognizes real. Mm-hmm. And I just remember being in that space and being there every Tuesday or Thursday.
It was Tuesdays and Thursdays.
And every single time we went, and spent time together, I think that's where our friendship started evolving, because we were just so excited about interviewing people. We were very outgoing. We were like the go-getters. We were like, let's go and do it, and like let's take action. And I really vibed with that. You know, some people can find that competitive, but I think
I don't think it was that environment. Yeah.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's like it wasn't competitive. It just felt like it was a natural kind of like mutual understanding, like, oh, this person is very supportive, I'm very supportive, and we're here to like create journalism and interview people. And that was really exciting for me to like meet someone who was just as excited and like just as outgoing. So I think that's where like our friendship began, and I feel like we both blacked out at some point in our friendship.
You always say that, but I remember moments where we would text for hours.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there was a point where like we maybe like was on the phone for hours too. I remember you had the push-up orange and white phone.
Yep.
And that was during a time where like you had that phone and you would like constantly change your phones.
Yeah, I would either lose a phone, break a phone, or it just would malfunction.
Yeah, so that was the way how like we began becoming friends, and like our friends became friends, and then like we were like in this circle of friendship.
Lots of circles.
But before that moment, like, what was Sofija like before then? Or let's bring it back, like, where are you originally from?
Yeah, I think Sofija during that time period I just started a new school. I just transferred high schools in my freshman year. So I was starting to create forever friendships, because in my previous high school, I was one out of thousands of kids. And then I transferred to a high school that was like 1 out of 10 kids. So attention was like very focused on individuals at my new high school. So I was born in Queens and then moved to Harlem when I was about 10, 11. I was transitioning. I transitioned schools and households and parents, and had a new sibling. So I transitioned during that time of like being a double digit human being on this planet. So I was like 10, 11. And then, created roots in Harlem as a young person, and then just started creating my community from there. I'm a firstborn generation of immigrant parents. I speak 3 languages. I'm a person who wants to continue my language journey. I'm just a person who I feel like where Sofija's from comes from many different places. I'm just a very multifaceted human being. And it's hard to pinpoint like who I am, because I'm always evolving and I'm always changing. Back then, I was a little bit more trying to socialize in my community and be accepted and find friends and conforming. You know, you dress a certain way to conform, you put your hair a certain way, you know, you go with it. But I always had my own I think we all have our own personality and individuality, but we don't learn about that till much later, till we stop conforming to our society, because it's a human nature thing. You want to be accepted by the tribe, or else you're exiled and then you're left for the wolves, you know. It's survival, so you conform to survive. And then I think when I was meeting you, I was like this chaotic redheaded girl.
No, you wasn't.
I was half red. I was half red. The full evolution of redhead Sofija didn't come full circle yet, but there was like a style where like half of your hair was red.
That was the bisexual style.
That was a bisexual style. And I am bisexual, so I guess like I didn't put 2 and 2 together. But
did you realize that at the time?
I mean, I noticed that a lot of queer women or like bisexual women had like the hot pink or like the blue,
just like a piece of their hair dye.
It's like they're like showing you a bit of themselves. And I did that hairstyle in Malaysia, funny enough. Like,
really?
I didn't necessarily do it because it was a trend, because I didn't even know that was a trend. Maybe I started the trend, I don't know, because no one else had that hairstyle where I was going to school or in my neighborhood. And then after I had the hairstyle, like everybody had the hairstyle. Maybe, I don't know who started it, but I did it in Malaysia because my stepdad's cousin worked at a hair salon, and she was like, do you want to do red? Do you want to do half red? And I was like, sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. I also was like a free hairstyle, a free hair dye, which I didn't I wasn't raised in the salon as I wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, my mom wasn't a very like hair salon kind of person. So yeah, that's where I was half evolving
Mm-hmm.
to becoming full blown redheaded Sofija, who
Mm.
she took over like 10 years of my life.
We're gonna get there.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. But you know, during the time of our friendship, because we've known each other maybe like 17 years.
Yeah.
Can you believe that it's been 17 years?
I still feel like I'm 17.
Before we continue with our conversation, here's a clip from the film Peace.
You ride. Always into the day I die.
We basically met at WKCR, and everything else just felt like at that time it was such an amazing time that was.
Why was it amazing for you?
Just because it was just like there was so much going on. We were going to the radio station, and then we were going to all these events together. And the thing was, it was like we were so young. Like we were going to these events at the age of like 16, 17. But before we go into that, there was an era of Sofija, and I think this might have been a little bit prior to when I met you, where you was like a party promoter as a teenager. What was that like? Was I around for any of that?
Yeah, I think you were around. I was doing party promoting around like 16, 17, maybe 18, and this was for the teen bashes that happened in the Lower East Side. There was one that was in the Bronx, but I never went to that one. But I befriended a bunch of these people. There was actually a few in Harlem as well, but I befriended a bunch of people when I used to go clubbing. And there was this place called, I think it was called, oh my God, I'm blanking. Hold on, let me think of it. Oh, I'm trying to remember the name. So there was a club that allowed teen parties, and we would line up at like 6, 7 p.m. to get in for free.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, we weren't really drinking at the time, so we either would we would just soberly go to these parties and like dance and meet people, and then we met a bunch of these like Lower East Side guys that we would go party with every weekend, and then we started drinking with them, so we would pregame beforehand. And luckily, like, they weren't creeps. They were like around our age. They all went to LaSalle Academy. It was like an all-boys school, and I went with this girl, Diana. She was my high school best friend at the time. She was like a Pisces sister who was about a year or so older, and so she and I would just like party and promote these parties and like bring it to the school. I kind of got in trouble in the school for bringing these flyers. I didn't really get paid for this. I just got in for free. Or I had to bring girls to get in for free, and the guys would get like a discount to get in. That's wild. And luckily, like, I would go to these parties, and I always somehow like intuitively knew when to leave, because every time I left, there would be like a huge fight somewhere where it was like there was like some people got like stabbed, or some people, I mean, this sounds very dangerous, but 99% of the time there would never be a fight. It would just be like really these teens who I guess were really horny and really wanted to meet someone. I always went there to like find love, because I really believed that like the one was in these spaces, because where else was I meeting boys? I knew not to meet boys in school, because I believe you don't shit where you eat, especially when you go to a small high school. So it was either like the club, Love in the Club, and that song actually came out during that time. I remember it because we were singing it a lot. And then I would just go to these places, and I always knew where the party was at. Like everyone would hit me up every weekend and be like, "Where's the party? Where's the party?"
I remember that.
Yeah, and it would transition. It went from like clubbing to these teen bashes to going to these warehouse parties in Brooklyn, which would be
Mhm.
like what I think it was Bushwick, I think it was Williamsburg, and we would take the train there and
Yeah.
take the train back.
We would go to Greenpoint
We would
when
go to
Greenpoint was empty.
we would go to a lot of places that right now are not what it was. And we would
Mhm.
go, I remember going into this massive warehouse where there was like 3 floors, DJs, lights, fog machines, and people were just vibing. And I have so many photos and so many memorabilia from those days because
Mhm.
it was a vibe. It was fun. There
Mhm.
was no social media.
Mhm.
You had your like digital camera or you
Mhm.
had your like sidekick camera. No one was posting anything online, rarely.
Mhm.
And it was fun. Like you just would get drunk and drink Four Locos and just party, and everyone would come back to my house and sleep over.
Yeah, that was, and it was so, like, I'm thinking about those times now, and we just transitioned through so many groups of people. Like, for example, when I think of like Brooklyn days, like I think about like the white kids, like I think of like Luke Brooklyn. Every time I think about that era of like
And he
you,
just got married
he
in
got
Italy.
married? Really?
Yeah.
That is wild.
I bumped into him a few weeks ago and he's like a whole evolved person.
Does he still go by Luke Brooklyn?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so wild.
Yeah. He's a time capsule.
Yeah, like I think of him when I think of that. Then there was like the time where like skating. I was not much a part of that, but I went skating with you guys. Like I would like hang out in the area of like the Bronx. Then there was like a time when like me, you and Rachel and Diana hung out like in Queens, and then there was so many we would hang out with the black kids, the Latin kids, like we would hang out with like everyone.
Yeah, we were fluid.
We were fluid people.
We just wanted to have a good time.
Yeah.
Meet some boys.
Yep.
Meet some girls.
Yep.
Take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were just so curious about New York and humans and wanting to be where the vibes were and having like conversations in the kitchen at house parties to
Mm-hmm.
being at the 40-ounce bounce where it was like really, really tiny, and going to Luke Brooklyn parties, going to like places where like it was not safe to party in there, but we still partied in there.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these people who either like threw these parties or were DJs at these parties, all are kind of like successful people or have created a name for themselves from that type of promotion or that type of like hype or whatever it is. And I think it was our version of Studio 54, or our version of like being in the party scene with like the party kids back in the day. It was our own way of taking over the city. And I try to relive that experience now, and it's completely different. I can't be in the environments of like going to pianos like I used to. One of my favorite bars, Max Fish, which is like where you can go there and like be dressed down. There was a bunch of skaters. They would sometimes even feed you there, and it was an awesome bar, and it closed down. And it's like these spaces where you can vibe with real people, and it's not Instagram-y, and no one looks like Kim K, and no one is like following all these trends, and no one's on their phones. Like you really made connections. And I think some of these people now are still in our lives and kind of are like bonded from those experiences. And I never, they're not traumatic experiences, although like, puking behind like a broken car and then continuing partying could be a little traumatic for some people. But you just like went with it. You just kept going because like our bodies snapped back. We didn't die the next day.
I think for me, what like solidified our friendship was the summer of 2009. We met in 2008, and I think 2009 was like the year where our friendship, I don't know if you can relate, because the summer of 2009 was crazy.
Bring me down memory lane so I can recall.
The summer of 2009 was the year where like me and Whitley were close. Well, me and Whitley were starting to get close. And we went to like this program called Double Discovery. I met her through another program on Columbia University. And at that time, I had a friend, Unica, who I still love, support her, whatever, but we grew apart. you know, her and I were growing distant. And then like you and there was a point when me and Unica was going to parties together. And then that summer you would come to visit me in Whitley. And then there was a point where like I don't know if maybe this was like, it was like 2009, 2010, the whole Justin thing. That, I feel like that was something that like brought us closer and like challenged us in that way, because it was like, this guy's not gonna like screw up our dynamic. And I was so stressed out about, like, I feel like I was more stressed out than like you and Whitley. Like,
Let's give some context. I can give some context.
Okay.
Because I think, you know, this happened so long ago that, you know, it is what it is. For me, I think a lot of people know this. Friendships are so sacred to me.
Same.
That, can I curse on here?
You can do whatever you want. That
a fuckboy will not intervene on that. Our mutual friend had, you know, I'm glad now she's in a more healed space. And at the time, we basically shared a guy, or transitioned men. Like, this guy came in my life. I met him at this freaking Cutco seminar because I was desperate for a job. I think I just finished working at McDonald's or something like that.
But we were in high school.
Oh my God.
You used to get acrylic nails.
I used to have acrylic nails. I still get once in a while. Once a year, I'll do the honor of getting acrylic nails to make little Sofija happy, or inner teenage Sofija happy. But this was like a guy who really didn't matter, but like he stuck around and he liked me, and I wasn't sure. At the time, I was just not getting into any relationships, because I thought relationships meant forever. And that was my own little journey. But he was stuck around, and I introduced him to our friend. And then when I was kind of done with him, but he still stuck around, she kind of pursued him and he went with it. And she had to learn girl code the hard way with me. And we're still friends now, and I love her dearly. But it was one of those things where the universe was like, okay, are you guys really a friendship, or are you gonna let this man come in between you? And I knew in the bigger picture, because I'm very spiritual, like since I was super young, my intuition just always knew.
And we were teenagers. We were like 16, 17.
But we really thought we were adults. Like, we really thought we were grown. We were trying to grow up super fast, and I think that experience helped me grow a lot, to know like what was okay and what was not okay with my friendships, and whether or not she took it lightly or however she took it, I think it was a good experience for us to really test our friendship and to see if it was worth salvaging over a guy. And to me, I'm like, you have to understand what girl code is, but at the same time, I'm like, what if that's the love of your life and you met him through me, and that was the scenario?
Wow, that's a beautiful.
I just think of it like, maybe it didn't work out for me, and I don't want to be the person that's going to like prevent love. Like, I'm such an advocate for love, and even if it comes from like a really you know, foreign, taboo kind of way, I think I'm not opposed to that. But of course, I don't think the love of your life would go through that type of scenario. Ideally, what do I know? But yeah,
I feel like if there was an opportunity, he probably would have done something with me too.
I'm sure.
Because literally, he did some inappropriate things in front of me, and I'm like, what? Like, why are you like? That was a time, and so
I think he was a little traumatizing for all of us.
It was
because it was so new.
It was so new. I specifically remember on my BlackBerry texting. I'm like, are you serious? Like, going through my phone on 72nd Street. Like, I specifically remember that moment, and I'm like, oh my God, are my friends gonna like pull me apart again? I can't do this right now. Like, It was like such a rocky moment. And then we went through some times like you know, the time where I like got really crazy through the haze. And that was such a crazy time for me because I feel like that even brought us more closer. And that was in 2009. That was the winter 2000. And that was around like Thanksgiving. And I like lost control. And like you guys like had to help me urinate in the bathroom. And it was just like that
He
was
basically got really, really stoned for the first time by taking too many hits of a bong.
It was crazy. And
well, that's, I think what's funny with all of our experiences, we realize very quickly that we're ride or die.
yeah.
Especially when you feel like you've met in a past life. It's very difficult. Like, you know, friendships that are like meh, they come and go, and like they sometimes follow through, sometimes we'll be there and whatnot. But I felt with you specifically, I'm like, I've met this person in a past life. We were so in sync in many different ways.
It's scary. I can't believe it most of the time.
I also think like there's moments where your reactions, you know, because I've numbed myself. I'm a very sensitive person. I've recently found out I'm an HSP, which is a highly sensitive person. And I think survival for me was chronic bitch face, was kind of numbing myself, not to be very apathetic because I would feel so deeply. And if I didn't do that, I would not be able to, I would lose my marbles basically. And I think your reactions allowed me to see what a healthy reaction was.
Really? Because I was dramatic. I'm still
but that's what it is. It's like you reacting in that way is a normal reaction. Instead of me, I'm like a very like I've dulled myself to the point where my reactions are like, they're like, people ask like, are you actually feeling something? I can't tell. Like that's it's kind of also in my job. I can't react to something major because the show has to keep going. So in those scenarios where you reacted so strongly about something showed me, okay, this is serious. So when you reacted to this fuckboy Justin, who, you know, was trying to meddle between two of your best friends, and you advocating for me and saying like, no, this is not okay, allowed me to understand what boundaries were, allowed me to understand like, wait, that is not okay. And I'm learning through therapy that what happened, especially in relationships or with men crossing the line, it's like crossing the boundary. It has a lot to do with you just going with the flow instead of saying, no, I'm not comfortable with this, because again, it's all about like survival, and it's all about being liked and being part of the tribe, even though things happen to you that are not okay. So I think I'm unlearning a lot of that, and it helps when you have a friend to like react in a certain way that you're like, wait, okay, he's reacting like in a normal way, like why am I not you know, standing up for myself? Or, you know, that's where I see it with your reactions, no matter how crazy they were, it was, or even dramatic, it's a natural thing. Like I don't think you're numbed to these emotions, like you're organically being yourself.
I mean, we went through so much, the three of us together. We had so many moments where we were crying together, which we can, you know, we'll touch base on that too. But I feel like, you know, there was like this moment in our friendship as well where it was just like, you know, we're gonna do photo shoots in my house, and that started when you came back. Hello, Sunny. We're doing an interview right now.
Hey, honey, come here.
And so we did. It changed when you came back from Europe. I think that was another changing point.
That's when I was full red.
That was when you came back a full-blown redhead. You were like this dirty blonde brunette hair girl with like the red piece in the back, and then it spread all over. And I think at that point too, you also like removed your braces, and you was like this bombshell of a woman. Not that you weren't before, but it was like, you know, they say redheads love to have fun, and you took it there for sure. What do you think that era of your life was like?
I mean, thank you for the memories and thank you for the compliments, because I, you know, you just, as a human being, you just go with what you go with, and you forget that, you know, you evolve. I was always like the ugly duckling. Like I was always the last one to be chosen to be like on a date, or like with I was called ugly, flat chested, I look like a boy. I mean, whatever. These are the things where I was just always a tomboy. And I think this is when that moment in a movie where the girl becomes like, she gets dressed up and she becomes like a different version of herself. And everybody's like, oh, wow, who is this person? And I think that reaction made me learn like, oh, wow, like I have a presence. I have an essence to myself. But I was always humble about it because I think because I never was given that like beauty privilege, like a lot of people have that beauty privilege. They could get away with anything because they're beautiful and they could say whatever they want because
you don't
they're
think
beautiful.
that you experienced that?
I didn't think I did.
Okay.
It's like kind of like this, whether it's imposter syndrome or whether it's like I didn't believe in that. I just didn't have the self-confidence that I have now, especially coming from like a very traumatic like childhood where I was, ridiculed and bullied a lot, especially, being the only white girl in the school and being super pale, and I wasn't curvy, I was very flat chested, and it always goes back down to the male gaze and like how you're attracted to the boys. These boys don't care, but we girls cared so much of how we looked. And if you didn't have boobs, or if you didn't have an ass, or if you didn't look a certain way, you weren't popular, and all these things, all these ridiculous things that we're told in society, and things that I'm just unlearning. But coming as like this redhead, and I think you also like gave me some moments to shine in your apartment where we did like photo shoots, and made me feel very like fashionista, and like we were doing studio CAD world, and it was really fun, and you made me feel really beautiful and owned it. And like I look at these pictures and they're like so special, or videos that we did that made if I know I'm not going to have children, but if I have like my fairy godchildren, they'll see like, wow, Sofija was she had it, and you capture that history of me. So like that's special in its own way. And I don't know, I feel like when I became like this redhead, I didn't think I was already this crazy kid. I was just excited about life. I'm just an excited person. I'm excited to go outside. I'm excited to meet people. So this redhead, it was kind of like a spotlight on me, where I felt very, I stuck out.
I remember specifically, like, you came back from your Europe trip with your family, and you came to my house, and I was like, oh my God, your hair looks so good. You look so good. Let's take pictures. And I remember that time, and I love taking, it was, because before then it was just like, I was always obsessed with capturing history. That's another reason why I'm sitting here with you today. Like, and history looks different for everyone. The history of me and my friends. And I remember, like, it was, before you, it was like me and Destiny. Like, me and Destiny would take pictures all the time. And then it was me and my sister who would take pictures all the time. And then it was me and Unica. And then it became me and you. And then it was like me and you stuck around, and you came to my house, and we took pictures, and we did CAD World. And like, there was a time where we did nude photos, and we did like a lot of different type of things. And I didn't see myself going in that direction at that time. But then, going to fashion school, then Fashion Week happened. Like, what do you remember about Fashion Week days?
Fashion Week was fun. Fashion Week, I remember when you brought me to the tents when it was in Bryant Park, and it was very magical. It was like super unreal to go into these spaces with all these people, and like everything was free. And you gave me like little tactics of how to like get into these shows, and like we knew how to like finesse. We knew how to finesse because we were New Yorkers, so we knew like being a New Yorker, you already have an advantage because you know the city and you already know people, and you're like you kind of already have this air to you where you're just like, like nothing bothers you. And we're meeting all these people, and we're going to all these shows and all these parties, and we're in the in crowd. Like we're what seems like the in crowd, but really, we were photographing all these models and celebrities, and it was very, um, at the time, it was like so fascinating and new because we didn't have access to these celebrities through Instagram, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. Like, you can go on any person's page right now on Instagram, any celebrity, and you can see sort of what they're doing. Before, to see what they're doing, you had magazines. I remember all these like teenage magazines, like where I was obsessed with like Orlando Bloom, and I would see that he's like doing another shoot for Lord of the Rings. Like, you didn't really have access to their private life, and now you can go onto these people's pages and like see them in their homes with their spouses, with their kids, what they're eating. Like, you're like in their lives, which is, back then it wasn't like that. So when we saw people like Sean Paul and Keke Palmer, Wendy Williams, Richie Rich, like all of these people who were iconic at the time, seeing them and talking to them, you start becoming like, your head starts getting a little bit bigger and bigger, and you get excited.
We saw Sean Paul at Rosa Cha.
We saw Sean Paul at Rosa Cha, and he was very sparkly with all his diamonds. And I remember the conversation where I was like, what do you, like, I was nervous, but I was like, he's Sean Paul, whatever. And I was just like, so what are you doing? What are you doing in New York City? And he's, this line, which I'll never forget. He's like, I'm gonna break it down and build it back up.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, and he, and I remember seeing him again, like when we passed his car, and for some reason I had all these fantasies of like meeting these celebrities and then somehow like marrying one of them, and like now I'm on the other side. But I also always got sick during Fashion Week. Because we would go so hard. Yeah. We would shoot all day and then we would party all night and then do it all over again. Yeah. And then one day, like, my body just like would give up on me. And drinking back then was like everything was like watered down, but you would have free drinks all the time. You wouldn't eat. Yeah. Because in fashion, you don't eat.
And also because it was always just free drinks, never free food.
Right. So much free drinks. But I think Fashion Week just opened up a whole new world for us when we went, especially when we're together. We had access. You had background access, and I would be in the pit, or I would go background and you would be in the pit. We just kind of like
saw Drake at Fashion Week.
I did see Drake before he blew up.
And yeah, I think you told me you saw him. I can't remember. I was at another show, and you was backstage.
That was the Desigual show.
The Desigual.
When Winnie made her debut. And it was like such a big deal. Like, Winnie, this beautiful model who had the type, I forgot the name of the skin disorder, but beautiful, was on the Tyra show, that's another T thing where she never mentions Tyra. But anyway, just going backstage and then seeing Drake. And I knew Drake from Degrassi. Like, I was obsessed with Drake because of Degrassi. And I even cried in the episode when he got shot in that episode, because I loved him so much. And I knew about his music as Aubrey, right? And I remember seeing him, and as he was leaving, I was like, oh my God, I'm a really big fan. Like,
I didn't know you spoke to him. I forgot that point.
Yeah, he was just leaving, and I approached him, and I'm not afraid to talk to celebrities because I hate feeling the feeling of regret.
Oh, I remember. I know.
I hate feeling regret because I will just spiral in my brain like, oh my God, I should have done this. I should have done this. So I was just like, screw it. So I go up to him and I'm just like, hey, I'm a big fan. And he's like, he was so awkward. And he was like, thanks so much. And I forgot what else happened, but he like leaves, and I'm like, okay. And I go back into the backstage where Winnie is, and I'm shooting backstage photos. And then he comes back in, and all of the press is on Winnie. No one's paying attention to Drake at all. So he goes up to Winnie, and I think he's trying to get some press. And then he kind of like nudges her chin and was like, great job. And she was just like, okay. And then the next day, his album drops, and he blows up.
And I remember we were supposed to go to that party, but we didn't because I got busy with something else, because we knew his drug dealer.
We did know his drug dealer. I don't know if you're supposed to say his name, but we know.
Well, I'll bleep his name out then. Probably shouldn't be saying his name.
No,
but it's crazy that like our lives were like that, and we didn't think like. Do you think we were out of control?
No.
I
don't think we were out of control because we weren't drug users. We weren't.
I for sure wasn't.
No, yeah, we never went that route where people, a lot of kids were taking like ecstasy, cocaine, Adderall, smoking. I mean, I was a bit of a cigarette smoker at the time, but I think we were high off of life. As cliche as it sounds, as corny as it sounds, we were definitely high off of life because that world energized us. I think socializing and meeting people, we were so excited because it was new. And we were like out of our parents' house.
We were so young.
In comparison to now, yes, we were so young. But back then, everything felt fresh. We didn't have rent to pay. We didn't have to work. We didn't have to worry about wars. We didn't have to worry about anything. And the current event was Fashion Week. And I literally lost jobs because I wanted to do Fashion Week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I like started a job at this like convenience store selling stuff, and I was like, hey, I gotta take this whole week off because it's Fashion Week. And they were like, you just started working here. And I'm like, yeah, but it's Fashion Week. And mind you, I'm not like a huge like fashion obsessed person.
But it was the idea of being social.
It's the social. It's like there's the parties. It's the events, the thrill of like getting into spaces.
Remember when we landed on page 6?
We landed on page 6, which I don't know if it's as iconic as it is now.
Yeah.
But if you ever watched Sex and the City, or if you ever watched anything that had anything to do with New York City, like Gossip Girl, page 6 was the like gossip column. It was the page to be on. And we landed with doing exercise with DVF. And that was... So I guess to me, I didn't think anything of it, but for a lot of people, that was iconic. Because everybody was like, oh my God, that's you.
But because I remember Whitley, she called me and she was like, oh my God, you're famous, you're on page 6. I'm like, relax, girl. And I think for me, I still am kind of like this, where I just kind of, which I don't know if this is a terrible trait or not, but I'm like, everybody's doing it. Like, everybody's doing it. So
what exactly?
Like, but they're not doing it. That's the thing. But in my mind, I think they're doing it. Like, I think they're living this life. Like, where it's like, we're on set. We're meeting people. We're talking to people. We're living glamorously. We're living beautifully. Like, we care about, like, our inner selves, and we care about our outer selves. Like, we care about travel. Like, we care about those things, and we live that life.
So it's not surprising that we landed on page 6.
It was not that. It was just kind of like, I guess for me, it was not like, it was exciting, but I always felt like, oh yeah, like, I'm trying to think of like a person that like I just felt like other people were landing on page 6 too, but that wasn't the case.
No.
So it was a interesting time for sure, but that time also existed during a time of Tumblr. And I remember during that time, like, that was also what fueled me with Fashion Week. I was like there was like the whole Tumblr and Soho, like I call it Soho Wonder Day. We would hang out in Soho. And I that's another thing that like I never really identified with either, was being a Soho kid. Because I was a Soho kid. Like, I hung out in Soho, on Broadway. I was passing out flyers for Custo Barcelona, got a job at Hollister, and then it was like Model Central, like hang around models all the time.
Yeah.
So it was. Well, can you talk about like Tumblr days? Like, what was that Tumblr era for you?
Tumblr had to walk for Instagram to run. We all wanted that picture that got reposted. We wanted to take the fashion iconic picture that Vogue would repost on their Tumblr during Fashion Week. I remember those. Like, I tried so hard. I did everything I could to make sure I like got some reposts, or like my picture was seen by the celebrity. Tumblr was our Instagram, it was our TikTok, it was our Twitter, it was like our news central, and like we made so much effort to like customize our pages and like make it our identity. I went through so many phases of finding out like what the name I wanted and having to stick to a theme, and now I'm like realizing more and more that people are multifaceted. Like you don't have to stick to one thing, but people like consistency. And I think like you had a very consistent page of posting and taking pictures of very good looking men and models that were reposted by so many blogs that also love beautiful good looking men who were chiseled and in underwear, like
those days.
I remember it became so much of my identity, but I think I don't remember the time it fizzled out, but I think once Instagram came into the picture, like Tumblr slowly withered away.
Well, what happened with Tumblr is that they got censored because Instagram was censored, but Tumblr was free. And also there was like, and then Tumblr started to go crazy because, well, I wouldn't say it went crazy. It just became a safe haven for sex workers, which, get your coin. And it was, and so what happened was Tumblr was like, we're removing the sex worker content.
Yeah, I think someone bought Tumblr and removed
Yahoo bought Tumblr and then said, we're going censored. And that's what changed the landscape. And then we all logged off. We were like, you're censoring us. We might as well just go to Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, my page was called Smooch the Cooch. It was not necessarily Smooch the Cooch content, but it was like open for, that was the only place where I felt women were not overly sexualized.
Really?
Where you see pictures of women naked in such a beautiful way, where I felt very empowered in like my feminine self, where I can see women not in pornography. I see women like laid out, or someone is talking about loving a woman, and it wasn't degraded. It was not degrading in any way. So I don't know. It was unfortunate that Tumblr had become censored. And I understand the whole thing with the sex workers. They're like just covering their asses. But when you take away something that's like becoming free, it just shows like how America is just so uncomfortable with like women's bodies or men's bodies or anyone's bodies for that matter to be beautiful and naked. It's like the Garden of Eden. Like the minute that you are given this like this false narrative that bodies need to be covered up and that they're hideous, it's it takes away from prospering. Everywhere else, well, I'll say like in the Western world of like Europe, right? Like you see breasts and it's nothing, but men here are like, oh my God, you have to censor the nipple, and like but men and women have the same nipple, like it just doesn't make any sense to me, where when you censor people, you make it more, you will find it in different ways where it's not safe, where you're seeing images of bodies in like a very degrading way, and it becomes where you can't talk about it, and you lose that that openness, which we need to heal people who've gone through like sexual trauma, or people who have body dysmorphia. If you cover yourself up and you never talk about it, it's just like put it under the rug, and it just builds and builds and builds. And then you have people who are like sex addicts, or you have people who are just constantly obsessed with sex and they need that as a release. And when it becomes so casual, people are like, okay, we could talk about this in a more healthy light. So that's kind of like my take of like what happened with Tumblr, where I'm just like, all right, well, you're another censored environment, and I'm just not interested. And I don't know if we have any safe spaces for like websites or social platforms where you can do that. Or
I don't think there is.
There's Twitter, but like I don't know. I've deactivated or deleted my Twitter almost a decade ago, so I knew that there was like sexual content on there, but I don't know how it is now after it being X.
Well, sexual content is definitely still on Twitter, but I think that there's like the idea of money coming behind it always.
Right.
And you know,
Profit.
And so because of that, there's really no safe spaces. Like people went on because they were trying to find something. There were some people who were just like, I'm too cool, I don't need to be on the internet, you know. And then there were people like, the internet's cool. Like the internet is like and I've made so many friends just through the internet. You know, that was actually how you just discovered 40 ounce. That was a time too. Can you explain like what your thoughts on about like the whole era of 40 ounce?
Yeah, I honestly don't remember how I was introduced to 40 ounce except through, I guess, through the partying scene. Because I found his Tumblr a little bit later, which just featured asses. He's a big fan of ass, which I'm also a big fan of. I think ass is beautiful. Booty is beautiful. And I remember I was invited to his event that took place by Riverside Park around like 145th Street. And he did a really, really, really good tactic because he was a brand. He did like fitteds where he had a brand or like streetwear, but it was mainly like fitteds. And specifically he did a party or the 40 ounce bounce. It was like the first 40 ounce bounce that took place on Riverside.
This is the one I went to, or you went to a year before?
No, I think this was the one that we went to. I can't recall if I went the year before.
I think we went to the first one.
Actually, I went to the one beforehand.
Okay.
Because I remember, I'll get there, the 40 ounce bounce when I first went, it was just like, I think a lot of my Uptown friends were like, let's go to this event. There's free 40s. Smart. Free like food. You tell people free food and free drinks, they're gonna show up, and then you're a brand. Like that's a great marketing strategy. Like I think he's a brilliant marketing genius because he also would release his hats for only 24 hours. So if you didn't get that hat within 24 hours, you would never see that hat again. And like even a lot of celebrities wore his hats, but he became like this, like if you had a 40 ounce hat, like you were super cool. So I remember one of the first 40 ounce parties, I used to hang out with like a bunch of these Uptown kids, and we used to always go to the house parties. I met a lot of good friends through that, those parties. And I think one of those 40 ounce bounces, you know, there was, thank God social media wasn't around. Thank God, like Instagram wasn't really a thing, or like, but Tumblr was a thing, and it ended up on Tumblr. But I did like a 3-way kiss with these 2 other women.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was like, it was such a big deal. Like I was just like, oh, women, whatever. But for one of them, it was a big deal.
I think they circled you or something, or what?
Yeah, we did like a 3-way.
No, but didn't like people see it? They were like, oh my God, that shit happened.
It was like under the bridge, and like, yeah, it was. I won't name names, but yeah, we had like a little moment, and we're still friends today. Like we know of each other, and like we hang out when it's the appropriate circles. But yeah, like that's how I became friends with these people. And then we would always go to like Locksmiths, was another bar that was like a vibe. And then the following year, I was like, let's go to this thing, and it every year just got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where he would post it on Twitter. He's like, the 40 ounce bounce will be at this location. That, like, when I tell you thousands of people showed up from all over to Washington Heights because he was trying to do it in Fort Tryon Park or somewhere by the water.
I didn't go to that one. The first one I went to was with me, you, Diana, Destiny, I think Rachel.
Whitley.
Was Whitley with us?
Yeah. I have the video.
Whitley was with us.
Justin was there.
Justin was there.
Yeah. That was
2009.
There you go.
That was that's what I'm saying. That year, that year was so rough.
Yeah.
I got arrested.
Yeah.
It was a lot. That was the year I started hanging out in Soho, doing the Custo Barcelona.
Yeah.
2009.
I guess.
So, and so then it was then, so it ended up in Fort Tryon. I don't remember that part.
Well, that was when I was going to college, I think, because that was when I was with Rachel, Saul, Marilyn. Because Marilyn, this girl from my high school, she lived on 176.
Okay.
in one of those big towers. So we were like, let's go pregame there and then make our way to the thing. And I was heavy on Twitter back then. I was Twitter fingers. Like that was my social media. I was like always telling people to get on Twitter, but no one was getting on Twitter. But that's where I saw all the like notifications that the 40-ounce bounce got shut down because the cops came. There was helicopters everywhere. Helicopters everywhere. And when I tell you, like, the 40-ounce bounce ended up just on the streets. And everybody was outside. Everybody was drinking. Everybody was smoking. Like, obviously when weed wasn't legal. But it was so much fun. I kind of got too fucked up that I ended up having to take a cab home. But I had a blast.
What?
We were all, like, drinking just outside, like, having 40s because it was, like, the 40-ounce bounce. And we were just, like, vibing out. And then, like, I think that was the last year he did it, like, free and for the public because it got out of control. And I think he probably got like threats from the police. I don't know the information. Like we're not that close, but I know that he ended up doing 40-ounce bounces like legally where he would charge tickets and it would be at a venue.
Yeah.
And I think I went to one of them. It was like on a rooftop.
We went together.
That was really fun. And that's when I was doing content where I was like trying to do content before Instagram became like a really content forward platform. And then after that, it was like not the same people. It was very different.
I think that's when it started to feel a little showy.
It became one of those events like where back then it was more like uptown vibes and you had some sprinkle of Brooklyn people. And then it just blew up to like everybody came. Jersey came, Westchester came, Brooklyn came, Queens came. And you would see some of the people you knew, but it wasn't the same. And I think I was like 20, 21 then.
And I remember, I mean, it was like moments like that. It was moments like Afropunk.
Yeah.
And I remember it was, I think you knew about Afrofest or something. There was something that happened before Afropunk.
No, it was Afropunk was first, and then it was like all in combination
because
they would have Battle of the Bands.
It was something that we went to that was in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And it was like a
Battle of the Bands.
It was I think that was when you and I met Gito. And he was at the party and I think he was like saying, oh my God, I'm like, you know, living on life on the cloud or whatever, if you know what I mean. And I think it was, and then I remember like we was trying to go into Afropunk and Braulio helped me get into Afropunk because he knew someone who worked at Afropunk and then we got tickets to go to Afropunk.
Yeah, I was working Afropunk.
You was?
Yeah, that's where I got you in as well.
I don't remember that. She sent an email. I remember I think you got us in. I got VIP because he gave us VIP. It was like this girl named Ashley. That's what it was. But I feel like we always ended up in someone's party or something like that. Can you attest to that? Like,
yeah, I think we just kind of said yes to everything. And because we had our cameras gave us so much access. We always had a camera around our neck. It's different now with our phones and, you know, even Fashion Week changed. Like before it was, you were honoring the photographers who had physical, like our cameras. And then it shifted to influencers who had their iPhones and, you know, whatever. But then for Afropunk, or even like the hip hop festival or any of these festivals, what was that? The Red Bull, where you had a Red Bull? Was that also?
I think that was Afropunk.
Yeah, that was one of the Afropunks.
I was freaking out.
Yeah.
That was the last time I had a Red Bull.
You were so sensitive to caffeine. Yeah, so that Afropunk, then there was the Battle of the Bands. We just had access to a lot of these things because we either had like a press pass,
a friend,
a media pass, a friend, or for example, the Afropunk, I really wanted to get involved and take pictures, but I also just signed up to volunteer and I got interviewed and I
didn't know that.
Yeah. I went and got interviewed in their Brooklyn HQ. And I think that also became over the years, it's similar to 40-ounce where it just became too showy and it became too much when before it used to be in basements, it used to be in like garages, and then it ended up in the park, in Prospect Park, and then it got to the point where, which I'm sure they wanted, but before it was free. and then you had to buy tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started getting all these sponsors and vendors that kind of maybe aligned, but you know, money talks. And I understand why people, I guess so, they'll call them sellouts, right? But living in New York City, you're all for survival. And as much as you want to do things grassroots and things that are free for the community, you can only do it so much where it doesn't hurt you. And then once it starts hurting you, that's when it becomes problematic. And you know, I know a lot of people who have created things that were free, but it bit them in the ass later because they just couldn't keep affording it. So of course you're gonna go and get like sponsorships from these corporations, but Afropunk was so against that from the beginning that it just, once it started becoming way too sponsored by all these companies and corporate, it lost its like essence. Yeah.
I mean, it was, I think,
but again, like that's my opinion. Like this is totally my opinion, and like great for the younger generation to experience that in like a festival way, because you know there's the Gov Ball and there's like all these different festivals in the city. There should be one that's curated to like Afropunk, like totally, like, and they should get the same amount of sponsorship and money as other festivals, right? Like that's the one thing I want to clarify. It's great that they can have that, but I know people who were there from the very beginning who are like, it just doesn't give the same vibe, because now you're bringing in people who are not underground bands who are like Afropunk. You know, you're bringing in bigger names to get more,
which dismiss
headliners,
the artists that are on the rise.
Right.
Do you remember when we went to that Wilhelmina party years ago? It was, I think about that time because this was before like Machine Gun Kelly got super crazy famous. And I remember I was shooting for the agency. And once again, it was the same situation where it was just like, we're going to go out. Like, do you want to come out? And it was you, my sisters.
Right.
And we all went out. Vashti was playing. Do you remember this night?
Yeah, I do.
And like that.
And he poured tequila in your mouth.
Was it tequila? I thought it was vodka.
It was tequila. He poured tequila in your mouth.
It was in both of our mouths.
Yeah, it was both in our mouths. It was really fun. He was so hot.
It was, and now it's, I think moments like that, I'm like, can they really happen again? Like, I don't think so, because I feel like social media, like, I feel like that was a private moment. I mean, now I'm talking about it, but it was moments where like we were just partying, like, you know, seeing Remy with his guy, Remy, not our Remy, the other Remy. Do you remember seeing Remy at that party?
Nope.
He was there, and it was wild. Vashti was spinning. Theopolis London was there. Like, that was like such an era.
Yeah. It's again, like, I'm sure older New York generations, they probably say the same thing. Because every time like we would go to St. Mark's, where when in high school, like that was still punk. It was still like gritty. It was still fun before all these like, again, corporate companies came in and took over. But my mom would always say, oh, St. Mark's is different. It's not the same. So I think our time capsule was also precious as millennials, right? We're like the forgotten generation. We're the squeezed in between generation. We've just been beaten down. I think we also had the most fun, I think, because we had access to places before social media. It's the word, like even the word influencer for me, like gives me the biggest ick, because what are you influencing? Things that already have been done. So it's like when I see these like kids going to these, oh my God, I'm saying kids, but these young adults that are going to these spaces that we already been there, done that, and you'll never experience it the way that we did, because we didn't capture it. Like that moment when Machine Gun Kelly poured like tequila in our mouths, that was, I mean, we were fangirling a little bit, but we weren't like on our phone, like, I have a
photo of him performing, but not a photo of him pouring it down my throat.
Yeah, you took yeah, I mean, because we were in the moment.
We were in the moment.
It was so, you know, special. I mean, obviously not very sanitary, but it was kind of like in the moment, like, holy shit, like this is happening. I'm at the phase in my life where, because influencers give me the ick, good for them for getting free shit and like having that climb in society. But I also don't like to idolize like celebrities, because like they're people, and the fact that we're idolizing people makes us feel belittling ourselves, basically. So I'm kind of getting out of that mindset, and I think we're the same in that way, because we will go to these fashion shows, we'll go to these parties, and we see a celebrity, and it's like, oh hey, like, wow, I would love to take a photo of you to capture that moment, but at the same time, we don't need to take a picture, and we're sharing space. And that's so great that if you're someone who creates movies, you're an actor, you're a musician, you're a very talented being, and I'm going to tell you you're talented, but I'm not going to fangirl to the point where I'm like, oh my god, because like, think about it, like, okay, you fangirl for a second, and then what do you talk about to a celebrity? They don't know you, but you know everything about them. It's just a very one-sided experience where it makes me very uncomfortable. It's like, no, I want to tell you about me. So you don't feel so, like, I'm sure celebrities don't want that type of attention, but
I never thought of it that way. Like, yeah, you know everything about me, but I know nothing about you.
Yeah, it's a very one-sided experience. So like, when you go up to like a person, you're like, oh my god, you changed my life. They're like, who the fuck are you? I remember when we, like, back in the day, you could send like fan mail.
So crazy. We were saying back in the day.
I'm okay with getting older and becoming like that angry New Yorker, like friendly
Are
voice.
you angry New Yorker?
I'm angry that we can't afford to live here.
Okay.
I'm angry that the places that I used to love going to are not there anymore. I hate that the places where we used to have access, unless you're an influencer, you can't go into them anymore. Like we millennials, we had to walk for these Gen Zers to run. We paved the way. So, we were more humble about these experiences, and they're referencing our content, they're referencing our style, they're trying to wear 2000s clothing now, which is funny because we were trying to wear the 80s clothing in high school. So everything repeats itself, but it's like, please honor your elders.
Oh my god, please.
I'm at that point now where I'm like, honor your elders.
Please.
Like, you are who you are because of us.
Oh my god, shaking it out.
Same as I honor, like, the people who are New Yorker, like Fran Lebowitz. Like, she is a fantastic writer, and she is still around, and she's like, she gives me like the essence of New York. She's like, piss off, stop taking pictures, live your life, exist, be present. These kids are not present, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, it was I would not have want to exist in the era of like every single thing is being. I love documenting my life, I do, but I document it for like the community of people that are in my community, for me, and it's a reflection, because they would like, I often daydream about what my mom's childhood was like, what her teenage years and her 20s was like before she had me. And, I think about like our nephew that, we share. I think about our niece. I think about like the kids that are going to come in our community, and they're going to be like, what was it like for you during that time? And I'm like, I could show you. So, but to like just be making content just to be making content just feels frivolous to me. But I understand. I do understand those people who are about their coin. I understand, they're like, people find inspiration in many different ways. But
I think it goes back to just human beings as creatures who we always love looking at other people. Like when we did our Soho Wonders Day, we literally would just sit there and watch people. And now it's instead of sitting in a physical place, people are at their homes watching people. Like, we're so obsessed and fantasize and like are interested and like fascinated by other people. Like, we love to show and tell all the time. And I think we did it just in a different way where we kind of like took pictures like physically, where we printed them or we show them like in a online in a different setting or a different platform. But I think human beings are just curious about other human beings and just want to see how they're living their lives to compare to their lives, and hopefully not in like a toxic way where they're not comparing it in a way where it's like their life is better than mine, because the grass is not greener, honey. Like we all have our demons and we all have our like struggles. So whatever you see out there, just take it as a grain of salt, because you don't know what's happening really behind the scenes. Like same like you will show people what they want to see because you allow them to see a certain part of you. And it's very important to have a private life. So important to like come back and like no one knows sometimes where you're at, what you're doing, how you're you have to take moments where you kind of go away a little bit from the internet. Like don't post all the time. People don't need work in silence. Do your thing in silence, or just not posting anything, because mal de ojo is real. Like the evil eye is real, where people will be putting things out into the ether for your doom. And even though I feel like I'm very protected, I make sure, because my heart is very true. I feel like because I know I have my guardian angels, I have my ancestors, I have a very, very close community, I know I'm protected. And I know I will never do harm or speak poorly about a person, because that's not my character. So when someone has ill wishes towards me, I feel like my guardian angels just like send it back. And I think people, in order to get into that type of mindset, you have to just like, people will fuck up, people will like, it's just part of human nature. There's a balance. Not everybody could be good all the time. Not everybody's in a good mental state all the time. I just think that we have to be not comparison and not think poorly about people. Just like we're all going through this and we're all trying to survive, especially in our climate of like finances and just not being bombarded by so much news and so much trauma. Like we don't realize how much trauma we're taking in just from our phones, So I'm at that space where I'm like, I know I'm heavily addicted to social media, absolutely, but I also know when to take a break.
Do you, because we've been through so much, what would you say is like a strong memory that we share together?
I mean, how personal do you want to go? How personal do you want to go? Because
we can go there.
How you can always edit this however you want, but I think,
or like an shared experience. I have mine, but I'm wondering what yours is.
I have a few. So the one that sticks out the most, because it's from the beginning of our friendship, was the time when you were hella high.
Here we go.
You were hella high. You took an edible. You didn't learn from the first time, but that's how you learn your lesson. You took an edible.
I will never get a job again, but whatever.
You took an edible, and I was at the movies, and I remember I was on a date. I forgot how old we were, but this is before we had iPhones, I think. Or maybe we did. We
had Blackberries.
We had Blackberries.
Because I remember, continue. I'll tell you why I remember when you finish.
Yeah. So I remember I was in the movies, and this is when I knew whether it's in my head or not. I remember I was just having like a bit of a panic attack. So the movies with this guy, I forgot how I met him. I probably met him at one of those parties in Brooklyn. And I just remember like kind of having a dry mouth and starting to have like this slow panic attack. And I was like, something's wrong. And I think that was also like the years that we really got connected. And I remember I leave the movie theater and your sister calls me and she's like, something's wrong with Adomiko. And I was like, what's going on? Because I was like, how does she know that something's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Because something was just like telling me something's off.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember she was telling me that you were in the dark and you were rapping to Little Kim. And I remember, I think I was like, put him on the phone.
I want to see what that's about.
I was like, put him on the phone. And I was like, what's going on?
Uh-huh.
And I had to like talk you down. I had to like bring you back to reality.
Uh-huh.
And I think my tingly senses were like also calming me down because I legit was having a panic attack. So I just felt like something was wrong. And the same symptoms that you were having, right? Like you were like out of breath and you're like dry mouth and you were just like spiraling. You were going through that as well. And I was just like talking you out of it. I was like, you didn't think you were going to come back. And I just remember like everything's going to be okay. I was like, we'll be fine. And I remember I was seeing this movie called Paul. It was like about an alien, but didn't bother. And I was like, let me just calm you down. And I talked to you for like a good hour, I think. And I think that's somehow imprinted in my brain where I was like, if something's wrong with the dough, I will know, even if I'm far away, like something will be off. And that was that. And I think there was moments where anytime we're like apart, and something's happening to you or something's happening to me, we kind of just know telepathically to be like, hey, what's up? There's things where, whether it was 2009 or like that whole high school experience to college experience, like you became family. Like my parents knew you, my friends knew you, like everybody knew like you and I were like a black and white cookie. Like you can't separate us and we won't be, you know, it was a yin to the yang where we have our differences, of course, but it was a point in my life where it was like, I don't see my life without you. Like it just wouldn't make sense because it's so ingrained so differently from my other friendships because it's almost spiritual. And it's almost like, again, somehow in our past lives, we were in each other's lives to also challenge and call each other out. Because I think we've had many times where we've called each other out or we kind of gave each other space or learned each other's boundaries, but still were able to come back. While in other friendships I've had where when things like that have happened, they never were repaired. Even if I forgave and we started again, it just would fall apart again. And you always knew something, like you allowed me to have these friendships, but you always somehow knew that like they were never going to turn out well.
Well, I wouldn't say allow because you can do whatever you want, but I do feel like, you know, I don't want to ever get in anyone's way, like what you just said. You know, like if you feel like this is like the love of your life, who am I to stop you? And our friendships are the love of our lives. You know, you have been a great love of my life. But yeah, after that time, I was like, hell no to the weed again. And yeah, that time was an interesting time. I mean, I stopped listening to music for like a month because of that. But
it has a vibration. It has a yeah. I've been there.
But like, no, actually, that was the second time. So that time was the second time. The first time I stopped. But the time where that sticks with me most, I think was when it was your birthday weekend. Continue being up to date with all things peace by following the links attached to this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's wrap up the show. When you turned 20, that was such a amazing weekend because that was the first time I got to meet your college friends. I think that was, and that was, I remember I was coordinating with them to like get them to send videos because I made like this whole birthday tribute to you.
That was such I think till this day it was, I think, the best gift I've ever received, ever.
It was.
I don't think anyone can top that.
That party that was thrown.
That was a banger.
It was a banger. It was out of control.
I DJ'd that night.
You did DJ that night.
I had my 6-inch sparkly heels on.
Yeah.
Had my tiara on.
That weekend was just amazing because I
Yeah.
remember I surprised you.
Yeah.
And you was like having fun the night before. And then I come in and you're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I was definitely shocked.
Uh-huh. And then I remember like,
and I usually know when someone's gonna surprise me. I always know, but somehow you got me.
because I remember, I think it was like, oh, I'm gonna see you. I was like, I was doing something to throw you off. I
Yeah.
remember that. I was like, oh, like you should come here. It was like something. And then I like walked into your room, never been to Hampshire, and I was like, hey. And then that whole week, and then I think you were also just a smidge overwhelmed because it was like me and it was Ryan, it was Rachel, and we were all like having a good time. Like I also think that weekend was so amazing because we spent that whole weekend singing Lana Del Rey.
Oh my god!
And it was just a song. It was
that
one
was
of
a Lana Del Rey summer when
Yeah.
she first came out,
Mhm.
or came back out again.
Mhm. It
Oh my
was
God.
that I feel like I think about that moment because I felt like that it made because it was like I got to be with you. I got to meet new friends. I remember we're not gonna mention his name, but I remember I got a little slutty with someone, and you was like,
That's
"Get out of the bathroom!
Yeah.
Get out of the
I
bathroom!"
was so protective over you.
And I was like, "I'm
I didn't
having
want-
fun."
I know. Well, you came off so like angelic. I didn't think anybody was gonna like. You were actually gonna do something like that.
I didn't think that I was gonna like have my wild times there too.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, we've had like a lot of different.
That was also the year the same year I applied to go to London.
And then you went?
Then I left.
Wow.
That also was a big pivot for me as well.
That was, and you came back, I had a dog.
Yeah, you did have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I had short hair. I had really short hair.
Yeah.
I went through it. I think 20s were rough. That was an like, I think sometimes life is like, it goes like this, and then there's like highlights that happen. Like that the birthday party was a highlight, and then it was like me going to London, and then you getting a dog, and then me cutting my hair, and then
because I remember you was a redhead, and I was like, yeah, I got me another redhead bitch because like you not
R.I.P.
around.
honey child. R.I.P.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
We didn't touch base on the fact that like there was a point where you almost could have had a modeling career, like an actual like working modeling career. Because I remember like he was like, oh yeah, like Red models, which Red is like gone now. But like I remember there was like a time where that was something that was possible for you.
Yeah, I think.
And you turned it down. You was like, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I think because what we saw in Fashion Week, and I think what we saw in that world, all in all, I always wanted to make my family proud, and being like a professional person, something that was a little bit more respectful. And like, of course, being a model is like a very big, it is a respectable line of work, but it's not a line of work that can last forever. And I know what goes into it for your body, your mental health. Like, it's, at the time, it was not as healthy as it is now. Now you have models that are a little bit more like they're taken care of, but they're abused. Like you always mention, like they're walking hangers, you know? And I never wanted to be that. Like, I wanted to be that person who ran the agency or was like a boss. Like, I didn't want to, I always had an issue with being told what to do. And I think I wouldn't do well in that type of industry because people crossed boundaries. People were sexually abused. People were, you're just like put into these, like, just looking at, there was like a image of this woman, a model's feet, and like they were bloody. And like, to me, I think back then I just knew like that's not the type of lifestyle I wanted. And I really wanted to be something that was a little bit more. And I also thought it was like a shortcut to success, like being a model. And like, sometimes I wish I took that route because life could have been a lot easier. But yeah, you know, you meet a rich husband and you get taken care of. But I don't think I ever wanted that type of life. And I'm glad I didn't, because now the person I am, I had to learn all of these lessons to become who I am now. I'm a person who doesn't drink alcohol anymore. And I know that model route you're constantly surrounded by it. It could be very toxic, whatever it is. But I didn't want to become like a druggie. These are the things that I saw. So now I'm like in a different phase of my life, but I had to go through all these transitions to get there. And I'm sure like if I wanted to, I can lose weight or be what they call like, what is it, the not the thicker, the type of model that's like for bigger women, a plus size model. There's
model?
another type of saying, whatever. But
that's wild that you think you would be a plus size.
Well, there was a model on my set that was considered a plus size model, and she was skinny as hell, but she was just tall, and she was like a little bit thicker, but she wasn't like 110 pounds. She was like maybe 130, and she was considered a plus size model.
That is wild.
Yeah. So the terminology has like just always baffled me, and I don't know, at the time I just wasn't thinking like that. Just it was something that like comes easy, just never appealed to me. Like finding like a sugar daddy or finding someone who will like instant money. It's just, there comes repercussions to that.
Absolutely. I feel like that's something that I've learned along the way, because I feel like I could have been in those same situations where like I could have probably had someone taking care of me. You know, I could have been the person who, I don't know, I just felt like I was so grounded in who I am, and I was not going to move unless someone wanted to move with me versus me move for someone. So, but
yeah.
And I think that's why we stuck around with one another, is like because we like stood strong in like who we wanted to be. And but that, I guess that leads me to like, where do you want to be? Like what are you working on right now?
Well, I will say,
because I know you're working as associate producer.
Yeah, and also producing. Like I'm known as the producer on set, but like I think we're the type of friends that hold each other accountable, but also hold each other to integrity. I think we really value and always looked at people who are successful, and like the way we spoke about them, the ones who didn't have an easy life and who really worked hard for their success. I always thought that we wanted to be those type of people. We didn't want something that like we would talk so poorly about people who had it easy. And I always wanted to be like an Audrey Hepburn or Elizabeth Taylor, or someone who was really good at what they did and did it with grace and did it where they were super kind, you know, like that's where I've always wanted to be. I want to be that person that's like, wow, Sofija really worked hard for this. And maybe I'm rich and fabulous and famous at the age of 60. Who cares? Like, as long as I did it with integrity and with grace and with kindness, because a lot of these industries are with people who come off nice, but they're not kind, you know? And I'm the type of person that really wants to be, I want to have really strong boundaries. I want to be that person that comes into a space and it's like, she's powerful. I want to smell like Beyonce, you know, like I want to smell like a strong Black woman, basically.
Oh my God.
As you said.
Oh my God, that.
You said she smelled like a strong Black woman.
She smelled like a strong Black woman when I stood behind her. And she probably doesn't even remember this, but like that day in my life on that set, July 20th, 2022.
Iconic.
Whew. But iconic. As you were saying,
222. July 20th, 2022. 222. You know what 222 stands for? 222 is a number that has been following me since last year, since I went to New Orleans. 222 means, and I'm obviously jacking it up a little bit, but it's like, it's where you need to be at that time and space. Like you're exactly where you need to be. That's what 222 stands for. Like, be calm, everything's gonna be okay. And so that's why whenever like 222 comes up, I'm like, I'm good. I'm supposed to be here. Like, there's chaos, but like I'm supposed to go through this right now, and the numbers are aligned with me, and like that's what it is. And so I kind of want to embody that like person. I want to be, and I'm working towards it. Like, I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were saying like, if you want to manifest a certain life, you have to start embodying those types of qualities that you want in that life that you want to manifest. it's kind of like you're tricking yourself out. So I always wanted to be a person that took their time very seriously. I'm not just like chilling. Like every time of my day is important. Whether it is resting, that's important. That's not being lazy. That's something I had to unlearn. It's like a lot of these things where I thought like I'm wasting my time is actually very valuable. So right now I'm trying to become like a full-blown producer. I want to be on sets where when they know it's my set, they know that they're taken care of, they're being valued, that they're not being abused, because a lot of film sets or commercial sets, they're intense. If you do a 6-day shoot, it'll take a toll. But I know I have a really strong willpower and a really strong capacity of pain, which is not the best thing to say, but it's one of those things where if I have to stay an extra hour to make sure that I order something for my crew the next day so that they feel more comfortable to do their job, I will do that. So I kind of want to be in that space, and eventually I want to transition over the years into something where I can help people, whether it's creating a program to help people to get into producing, or coaching people to like get out of substance abuse and becoming like the best version of themselves, especially women. I want to start creating spaces for women or people who want to connect over something that's creative and not surrounded by alcohol or like drugs or weed, something where like you're completely present. Right now, because it's so fresh and so new, and I will constantly talk about it, is like being alcohol free has set me free to do the things that I want to do, and to stop being in spaces that I don't want to be in anymore. Because I'll go to spaces and I don't want to be there anymore because I'm tired and it's loud and it's party, but I would drink to just tolerate that space, and I don't want to do that anymore because I'm like, I'm wasting my life and I'm wasting a lot of mental real estate thinking about, oh, I should do this, I should do that, and but I can't because I'm hungover, and now I have no hangover days. So that means I have plenty of time to start creating the reality in the world that I want to live in. And it's baby steps, but I'm trying to have a beautiful future where I'm abundant with friends who are of quality. I'm abundant with family that are still around. I'm abundant with people who respect me in my field of work. It's not only about money, because money will always come. It's energy. It will always be there. You work hard, you will receive. You just have to learn how to like manipulate the system to work for you. So that's kind of like where I'm at and where I want to start heading. And it's a new journey, and I'm very excited about it.
That sounds exciting. I mean, it basically kind of relates to my final question is, how are you producing peace?
How am I producing peace? I believe I'm producing peace by my very existence and knowing that I'm a good-hearted, caring human being who's very sensitive. I think I'm making sure that everyone around me is having a good time no matter what, and to allow people to just be, and not trying to control anything, not trying to fix the narrative or change the narrative, and just allowing things to flow as they need to flow, because I'm learning control means untrust, not being able to trust, and I'm learning to trust the process. So when I'm producing peace in my life, it's trusting the process and trusting that the people I surround myself respect and love me the way that I respect and love them, because my intuition's so strong, and I will never be around the presence of people who don't want the equal type of feeling towards me or towards them. And I think anywhere I walk and go, I'm making sure that there's always peace and harmony.
I
think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a busy woman, working on the many sets that you're doing, and, being around town. I'm sure there's going to be so many moments where we're around town together.
Oh, yeah.
Around
many more decades.
Many more decades, not only around New York City, but around the world.
Yes.
Let the people know where can they find you, how they can connect with,
Yeah.
Miss previously known Smooch the Cooch.
Yeah, Smooch the Cooch. She's still around if you ever want to find my Tumblr. But if you ever want to see my personal and professional work, you can find me on Instagram at Sofijams, SOFIJAMZ. Or now I am officially in the TikTok universe for the time being as golden_paperclip. And I'm around. You'll always see me in the streets biking. I'm at any event that has to do with wellness. And soon I'll be kicking off more content for just being your higher self.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Peace out.
Bye. Oprah hug.
Thank
All right.
you.